Imagine two people with exactly the same amount of money. One buys the newest supercar. The other quietly buys the company that makes its tires. 10 years later, one is still making car payments. The other is collecting dividends. That's the difference between looking rich and staying rich. And for more than 200 years, a handful of families have quietly mastered that difference. The Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, the DuPonts, the Waltons, the Mars family. Different countries, different businesses, different centuries. Yet somehow, their fortunes survived wars, depressions, inflation, political revolutions. Even the people who originally earned the money are long gone. So, what do they know that everyone else doesn't? Every single day, someone becomes a millionaire. Some win businesses. Some sell companies. Some invent the next big thing. Some simply get lucky. But history has a strange habit. Most fortunes disappear within about 3 generations. There's even an old saying found in different cultures around the world. Shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations. In other words, grandfather builds it, father grows it, grandchildren spend it. It's funny until you realize how often history repeats the pattern. Imagine spending 40 years climbing a mountain, only for your grandchildren to slide all the way back down because nobody taught them where the path was. Money, it turns out, can disappear much faster than it was earned. If you enjoy documentaries that uncover the hidden history of money, power, and the invisible systems that quietly shape the modern world, subscribe to Empire and Capital. Because history rarely disappears. It usually hides inside habits we stop noticing. Now, let's meet the families that somehow escaped the 3-generation curse. Most people think old money begins with old houses, fancy last names, country clubs, or wearing sweaters tied around your shoulders. Let's be honest, the sweater probably isn't doing the heavy lifting. Here's the surprising part. Every old money family was once new money. John D. Rockefeller wasn't born into enormous wealth. Andrew Carnegie started as a factory worker. The DuPont fortune began with gunpowder. Sam Walton opened a single discount store in Arkansas. Someone had to build the fortune first. So the real question isn't how do people become rich? Lots of people do that. The real mystery is this. How do they stop the money from disappearing? Because becoming wealthy is difficult. Keeping a family wealthy for 150 years might be one of the hardest things humans have ever tried to do. And that's where the story becomes interesting. Because when historians study the families that succeeded, they keep finding the same patterns. Not secret bank accounts, not magic investments. Patterns. 7 of them, in fact. And once you see them, you begin noticing them everywhere. Rule number 1. Old money protects wealth before it grows it. Imagine planting 2 things, a flower and an oak tree. The flower grows quickly. It's beautiful. Everyone notices it. But after 1 season, it's gone. The oak tree, it grows painfully slowly. At first, it doesn't even look impressive. But give it 100 years and it becomes something entirely different. Old money thinks like the oak tree. Most people think becoming wealthy is about making more money. Old money families see it differently. Their first question isn't how much can we make? It's how much can we avoid losing? That sounds boring, because it is. And that's exactly why it works. 1 generation builds the fortune. The next generation's job is making sure nobody accidentally destroys it. There's an old joke among wealth managers. The first generation earns the money, the second manages it, the third buys a yacht, and the fourth wonders where the yacht went. Funny, but history suggests there's more truth in that joke than most families would like to admit. Take the Vanderbilts. Cornelius Vanderbilt built one of the largest fortunes in American history through railroads and shipping. For a time, his family's wealth was almost impossible to imagine. They built enormous mansions, hosted extravagant parties, collected luxury unlike almost anyone else. But over the generations, the fortune became increasingly fragmented. More heirs,
More spending, more division. Eventually, the Vanderbilt name remained famous. The fortune didn't. Now, compare that with the Rockefellers. John D. Rockefeller understood something unusual. Making money once wasn't enough. His family created trusts, professional advisors, long-term investment structures, family meetings, even educational programs designed to teach younger generations what the wealth was actually for. Notice something interesting. Very little of that sounds exciting. Nobody posts on social media, "Look, everyone, our quarterly family governance meeting was incredible." Probably because nobody would click. But that's the point. Old money often looks surprisingly ordinary because most of the important work happens where nobody is watching. Rule number 2, they buy assets, not applause. Imagine you receive $1 million tomorrow. What's the first thing you'd buy? Don't worry. Nobody's judging. Well, maybe your future accountant is. Most people immediately picture something they can drive, wear, or post online. Old money families usually ask a completely different question. What can this money buy that will keep buying things after we're gone? That single question changes almost everything. Imagine 2 neighbors. Each receives exactly $10 million. The first buys a mansion, luxury cars, designer clothes, a yacht, private jets. By the end of the year, everyone knows he's rich. The second neighbor quietly buys apartment buildings, farmland, businesses, shares in companies, energy infrastructure. Nobody talks about him. 5 years later, guess which one is collecting checks instead of writing them? There is an old saying that's never really gone out of style. If it flies, floats, or drives, it's probably costing you money. If it owns, builds, or produces, it might be making you money. Old money has spent generations understanding the difference. The Rockefeller fortune wasn't preserved because the family kept buying bigger houses. It survived because ownership kept producing new income. Businesses, investments, land, productive assets. Things that worked even while the family slept. Because the wealthiest families rarely expect money to work for them. They expect their money to go to work instead of them. Rule number 3, they think in generations, not years. Imagine running a relay race. You sprint your hardest. Then, just before the finish line, you stop. Not because you've lost, because someone else is supposed to keep running. That's how old money sees wealth. Not as a finish line, but as a baton. You're not trying to spend it before you die. You're trying to hand it to someone who's ready to run even farther. That sounds simple, but it's surprisingly rare. Most people make financial decisions by asking, "Can I afford this today?" Old money families often ask, "How will this decision affect people who haven't even been born yet?" That's a completely different game. Imagine planting an apple tree. You know you'll never eat every apple it produces. You plant it anyway. Because one day, your children or your grandchildren will sit beneath its shade. Old money plants forests. New money often buys bouquets. One keeps growing. The other starts dying the moment you bring it home. One reason the Rockefeller family has lasted so long isn't because every generation produced another John D. Rockefeller. That would be almost impossible. Instead, each generation inherited a system. Family offices, investment structures, clear expectations, professional management. In other words, the fortune depended less on one genius and more on a well-built machine. Because even brilliant people eventually retire. Good systems don't.
Rule number 4. They teach their children differently. Here's a strange question. If you planned to give your child $100 million someday, what's the most valuable thing you could teach them today? How to spend it? Probably not. How to keep it? Better. How to create more of it? Now we're getting somewhere. Many long-lasting wealthy families don't simply hand over money. They spend years teaching responsibility first. Children are introduced to businesses, family history, investments, charitable foundations, board meetings. Sometimes they're expected to work ordinary jobs before joining the family business. Not because the family needs another employee, because they need another steward. There's a subtle difference. Owners think differently than consumers. Here's something funny. Many people imagine old money children growing up surrounded by unlimited luxury. And yes, some certainly do. But many also grow up surrounded by something much less glamorous. Meetings, expectations, responsibility. It's hard to post a picture of that on Instagram.
Rule number 5. They buy privacy. Let's play a quick game. Close your eyes. Well, maybe don't. You're watching a documentary. But think for a moment. Can you name 10 celebrities? Probably. Now, can you name the people who own Mars Incorporated? Or the family behind Koch Industries? Or even many of the descendants of the DuPont family? Probably not. Exactly. One of the biggest surprises when studying old money is how little attention many of these families seek. Privacy isn't just a personality trait. It's often a strategy. Less attention means less pressure, fewer distractions, greater security, more freedom to think long-term. There's an old saying, wealth whispers, poverty shouts. That's a little harsh. A better version might be, real wealth rarely needs an introduction. Because money that's busy proving itself usually isn't busy growing itself. Think about the Mars family, one of the wealthiest families in America. Yet most people couldn't recognize a single family member walking down the street. That's remarkable. They built one of the world's largest businesses and somehow stayed out of the spotlight. Sometimes being unknown is one of the most valuable things money can buy.
Rule number 6. They play the longest game. Imagine 2 people playing chess. One is excited because he just captured a pawn. The other barely reacts. He's already thinking about the next 10 moves. Old money treats wealth exactly like that. Most people measure success by what happens this year. Old money asks, what will this decision look like 20 years from now? Sometimes the smartest financial decision is the one that looks boring today. Think about Warren Buffett. He isn't old money. He built his own fortune. But his investing philosophy sounds remarkably familiar. Buy great businesses. Be patient. Let time do most of the work. It's almost disappointing. People want a secret. Instead, they're handed patience, which explains why patience is so valuable. Very few people actually practice it. Rule number 7. They build systems, not lifestyles. This might be the biggest lesson of all. Most people think wealth lives inside a bank account. Old money families know something different. Wealth lives inside businesses, trusts, investments, education, relationships, family governance. In other words, systems. A bank account can disappear. A well-designed system can keep creating wealth long after its founder is gone. Imagine building a water wheel beside a river. You work incredibly hard at first, but once the wheel begins turning, the river keeps doing the work. Old money spends generations building the water wheel, not carrying buckets. Now, let's go back to the question we asked at the beginning.
Why do some families stay wealthy for 200 years, while others start over every generation? It isn't because they were luckier. It isn't because they were smarter than everyone else. And it certainly isn't because they wore tweed jackets and drank tea from expensive cups. Although, I'm sure the tea was excellent. The real difference is that they stopped thinking about money and started thinking about systems. Systems that survive recessions. Systems that survive bad decisions.
Systems that survive people. Because people come and go. Good systems don't. Here's something historians rarely say out loud. The biggest advantage old money has isn't the money. It's time. When you think in decades instead of days, your decisions change. When you think about your grandchildren instead of next weekend, your priorities change. When you build assets instead of appearances, your future changes. That's why old money often looks surprisingly ordinary. The mansion, the vintage watch, the country estate, those are just the visible parts. The invisible part is discipline, planning, patience, education, ownership. Those are the habits that quietly keep fortunes alive.
So, maybe the real question was never, how do I become old money? Maybe the better question is, how do I build something that lasts longer than I do? Because history shows us something remarkable. Every old money family began with one person. Someone who decided to think differently. Someone who built instead of borrowed. Who owned instead of showed. Who planned instead of hurried. And while most fortunes disappear, the principles that created them never do. If you enjoy documentaries that uncover the hidden history of money, power, and the institutions that quietly shape the modern world, subscribe to Empire and Capital. Because history rarely disappears. It simply hides inside the systems we stop questioning. I'll see you in the next one.